All right, welcome back, everybody. This is the fifth episode of Lost Boys Presents Deep Cuts, the show where we take you deeper into the hearts and the minds of our artists. Um, Today, I am joined by one of the OGs of the Lost Boys, Miss Beelzebub. She's got two books out on Amazon right now: Hive Mind of Maggots and Nightgowns and Other War Memorabilia. You can find her on Instagram at Beelzebub_Montgomery and on Facebook at Beelzy Poetry. Um, thank you, thank you for being here, and thank you for coming back. We've missed you. How you doing?
I missed it too, honestly, but with how busy I've been recently, it's just been so hard for me to think about most things creative. But I'm happy to be back. Really, and this is a good way to come back is through a deep cuts episode.
Yeah, yeah, it is for real. I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm excited to have you on the live show as well too. I'm not sure which one. I'm not sure which one will be your like return because I'm not sure which one will air first. But I I'm excited to have see people's reaction when you return because honestly, people have been asking me when you're gonna come back and waiting for you and like I said, you're one of the OGs, so
Really, that makes me feel nice. I didn't actually expect anyone to notice my absence.
no, quite a few people did. Quite a few people did. And since we we've had, I think we just did our 31st show, and you were on like the third or the fourth ever show, and then like, yeah, you came on quite a few in the beginning. Yeah, people definitely noticed. People definitely noticed, and they definitely wanted you back. And I was trying to get some familiar faces for you for Saturday. I'm not sure how that's gonna go, but we'll see. But yeah, yeah. Especially also, most recently is my brother Brendan. He goes by Reaper. He asked for you like specifically because he was like we were talking about the deep cuts episode, and me and him were planning to record one at one point. Um, and he was like, "Well, who else could you bring on there?" And I was like, "Well, I really wanted to get Beelzebub on there at first, but I know she's been busy and whatnot, so I've been trying not to bug her too much. But yeah, no, you're definitely one of our favorites and one of the best. So I appreciate you coming on again.
Well, I'm glad. Hopefully now with the novel that's been keeping me busy coming towards an end, hopefully I'll be available for more things. That is if I don't get absorbed by the editing process, but I really need to focus back in on my poetry anyway. So it's good to, have this to come back to keep me focused on other things besides, you know, the creative outlets I've recently been just delving into.
Yeah, no, I feel that honestly. Well, so I was just sick with a cold, and then I had a stomach bug, and so with that and everything else that's been going on that I've been trying to keep up with, I haven't really been writing much at all. But I haven't written like fiction, like fantasy, the stories I used to write in. God, I think it's almost been 2 years now. Um, and that's a deep cut, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, it's been a while for me. So I really want to start getting back into stories too. And I think part of like my transition is going to be like doing more story like poems, if you get what I mean. You
Mm-hmm.
know, more narrative based poems. And that'll help me transition and help me get back into writing. Which I'm not going to stop my poetry. I just think I need to find some kind of balance. Is all, and that's
Yeah,
hard. Especially finding balance with that and then everything else you got to do in life. You know.
yeah. This is the first novel I've written since middle school, so it's been about 7 years maybe since I've wrote a novel, and my comeback is going to be a multiple part trilogy. It seems like.
That's that's insanity. What? So I know you don't want to give too much about it, but what's the genre? Let's start with the genre.
The genre is horror fantasy.
Horror fantasy. Okay, and is it all right? Let's modern day or a fantasy like not based in our time history or
It actually takes place in my universe, which has a kind of confusing timeline with all the different creatures and species there are. I would say it takes place around the time humankind is inventing guns and the sorts, but the species that we follow in the book are not nearly as civilized, and so it seems more historical, but it is actually not that long ago in history.
okay, I see. So they're progressing at a slower rate.
Hmm.
And, so are they is this universe parallel to ours or does ours not exist within this realm?
Ours does not exist. This is just my creative universe I've been creating since I was 12 years old.
That's
It
super
has
dope.
its own Earth, its own planets, its own galaxy. Um, it is basically if someone rewrote our entire existence, but as a separate universe. That's what my universe is.
That's awesome. I really I like that too is like I like those stories where it's if one thing had happened differently or something like that, like the whole universe would be differently or would have changed. Like I think all the time of what would have happened if Tesla had taken over the like electronics industry instead of you know Thomas Edison being credited for the light bulb and them going with AC power versus DC power, or you know what I mean, and them just monopolizing, and how like so much different the universe would have been, and like I've thought often about writing like a alternate universe story about like what in that exact scenario what would have happened if I don't know if you've heard anything about Tesla or the things that he was inventing or whatnot, but guy was ridiculously above his time period. Um, and Da Vinci as well. He had things. Da Vinci is known for inventing things that were like things that we have today. Like how did he even know about certain things that we have today that they didn't even exist back then? But he had them in his fucking journal, um, which is crazy. But um, yeah, I like that kind of alternate reality perspective. That's cool, and I'm interested to see what you do with it too.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm hoping that I will actually publish this novel, but as of right now, it's a very maybe I will, maybe I won't thing. I have to see how it looks when it's finished. I have to really see if I'm ready for the process of writing a sequel and maybe even a third or fourth book. Um, I'm not entirely sure if it will be published yet, but most of my friends are really looking forward to it, so it's kind of a I'm pushing towards most likely going to publish it. So I am hoping that eventually it will be added on to the list of books that I have published, but I'm not 100% about it yet.
That's that's a good plan, and I mean, like I said, you have two self published already, and Amazon seems like the best way to go right now. That's the way I plan to go. My plan right now, as it's planned, I plan to make an album and a poetry book, and these two pieces are they're going to have different some of the songs or poems or whatever may overlap between the two, um but they are going to go together, and but they're gonna it's gonna be kind of like a two-part thing. You have the album, which is vocal, where it's not all songs, it's there'll be spoken word, vocal performances on there and whatnot, and then you have the poetry book, which is not only my poetry, but I'm going to write kind of descriptions for each poem, talking about like where I was in my life when I wrote it, kind of the stuff I talk about and have other artists talk about on the show. Um, and so right now, that is the work in progress, is getting my poetry book, and then the album to go with it. Um, but and then I think after I lay those two things to rest, I think I'm gonna dial in on like storytelling and really try my hand at that some more, because I used to be pretty good at it, and I'd like to get. I know I'm a little rusty and it's gonna take a minute, but I'd like to get back into it for sure.
Yeah, that does sound
So,
like a good plan. I love the idea of like a poetry book and an album kind of coinciding. That's a a really nice idea.
because I always used to like the idea of like when you get a CD, you get the book with it, right? And the book comes with the lyrics, and also if the artist is creative, it comes with a bunch of graphic artwork, maybe some extra stuff in there, like a lot of the at least the rap and rock albums that I got when I was a kid, like Eminem and a big band that I listened to when I was a kid was 3 Days Grace. Their things had a lot of material in there. They had backstage footage of the band and all sorts of stuff. And I kind of was thinking, well, maybe what if I make, my little album, and then my, book to go with it or whatever is an actual book. Um, and, and that's, but, yeah, like I said, there's a lot going on. I'm doing deep cuts episodes. But I applaud you for like really like buckling down and just kind of setting everything aside to get this novel done.
Yeah.
So you wanted, when we were talking over Messenger, you wanted to kind of talk about like your process a little bit, and since and that is kind of a good segue too, is it's hard to balance everything. So how do you find balance, cut everything out and make the time, and what's your process for doing that, and then actually what is the process for writing the material, coming up with it, sitting down, and going about your.
Well, uh, for this novel actually originally started as a NaNoWriMo challenge, which is National Write a Novel Month. And it was my first year ever doing it, and I had absolutely zero idea what to write for it. I had zero idea what I was going to do until about October 30th. Uh, a couple days before the challenge started, one of my friends was messaging me and went, "Hey, you're still doing NaNoWriMo, right?" And I was like, "Oh, I guess I am." And so that day I sat down and I was thinking, what can I write about? And I'm in a D&D campaign, and I was like, what if I wrote a story about my D&D character? And I was like, this is a good idea. I just kind of took the settings, the characters, and I just moved them into my universe. I had to change many things, but and then I wrote an outline, and on November 31st, on November 1st, I just started writing, and I got
So
50,000
you
words.
so you do write an outline. You're one of
Uh,
the outline writers.
Barely. I would say I write the many as many chapters as I think I'm going to do, and then I write out the story pieces I want for each chapter. But it is not like a large outline. It's just this is what happens in this chapter, and then I figure out everything else as I am writing.
See, it's hard for me to. Um, so I've never written a full length novel. I would really like to, and I've written a lot of short stories and a lot of short story collections. and like 3-part things, which is pretty cool. But and I'd like to have them published someday, maybe in like an anthology or something like that. But I find it hard to, like the beginning and the end are easy, right? The middle is the hard part, and I find it hard to structure, like, from getting from A to C, you know, and exactly how I want to end up there. Okay, and we're back. Sorry for that interruption. I think I was going to tell you about this universe that I
Mhm.
uh, have kind of been thinking about since. So you know when you play make believe games when you're a kid.
Yep.
Now I wanted my brother to play with me one day, right? And
Mhm.
he was playing a video game called Shadow the Hedgehog, which is it was on the original Xbox and it was also on the PS2. It's a really cool game. And I was like, I made up my name, which was Bolt, and I really wanted him to make up his name, and he was just like, "Fuck it, Shadow," because that's the game he was playing, right?
Mhm.
And and when he got done with the game, we ended up, taking out our Nerf guns and our Nerf swords or whatever. We played, and the next time we saw each other, because we had different parents, we had the same dad but different moms. The next time we
Mhm.
saw each other, we played the same game and the same game and the same game every time we saw each other, and we ended up developing these characters until we kind of got too old to play in the backyard. And then we would sit down there, we would sit with like stat sheets, like we were playing Dungeons and Dragons, and make up stories about them with like these stat sheets and whatnot. And then when I discovered that I wanted to write, when I was like 10 or 11, I was like, well, I'm going to start, and I've written a billion different versions of like the Shadow and Bolt story, of like just little snippets of adventures they've been on, or like just here and there. But I want to sit down and write the definitive novel. But because it's like such a big part of my life, and like it's
Yeah, there's
the
so much.
story that I've been creating, like I want it to be my fucking Harry Potter, my Hunger Games, you know what I mean? Like that.
Mhm.
So it has me wondering, should it be the first novel that I put out? Because often the first novel that you write is dog shit, or comparatively speaking to what you're going to put out in the future, it's dog shit.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah, I definitely say that sounds like a project you have burning on the back burner. You write on it every couple weeks. You come back to it over and over. You keep financing it over the years. That's what that sounds like, and it sounds like there's other projects you put out first, and then sometime in the middle, after you finish setting out the entire series, that's whenever you just push it forward. That's what that sounds like, and I definitely relate to the idea of like being a child and then creating this world, because that's also how mine started. Mine started pretty young. I've always had a very wild imagination. It was one of the only things that was good about me as a child was my imagination. And I started writing about it whenever I was 7, I would say. Not very good writing, but I did start writing. And now it's grown to a massive size. I don't think I would ever be able to publish enough books to cover my entire universe, because it is just as full and vivid as the one we live in.
Yeah. And that's kind of how that's kind of how Shadow and Bolt became. Is we created Shadow and Bolt, the two brothers, and then we we created, so they're it's set in this universe, but an alternate version of this universe, where there are gods and monsters, and these things called elementals, which are basically, think of, like Avatar: The Last Airbender, people who can control elements. But it's not just
I
fire,
have
water,
those.
earth. It's
I have those in my universe.
Yeah, yeah. And so, one of the elements is darkness, and that is what Shadow controls. And then obviously, Bolt, he controls fire, or heat and whatnot. And but we also created other planets and other universes attached to this one and adjacent to this one, and there's been just so many. Like I said, I've written so many tiny, small little stories and small little adventures they've been on, that it's really the world building in each one has just elevated it and like it's become this huge structure in my brain. You know, um,
Mhm.
I definitely want to get it out there, but I like I said, I am rusty, and I'm not gonna come out the gate writing my favorite thing ever as being rusty. I'm gonna try to get some practice first. But I like the idea of like setting it on the back burner and kind of working on it a little bit at a time.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of famous authors did with their massive pieces, their opuses, I guess opi. That's what a lot of them did, was just have it in the background constantly.
Yeah, yeah. And I think like, and when I say there's a lot of new stuff coming, that's gonna be like produced per se through the Lost Boys name. And it's not all just going to be poetry. I mean, the show isn't just poetry; it's music and everything. But and I this is a deep cut, so I'll spoil it just a little bit, but I won't give away too much. But there's a summer slash good weather based show coming out on Lost Boys this spring, and it's going to be outside uh, based and let's say outside adventure based, and it's not necessarily anything to do with music or art or whatever, but I think it's fun and I think people will watch it, and I have a platform, so why not put it out there? And me and my producer Brandon, we do a lot of fishing and a lot of stuff like that, and I've always done a lot of fishing and hiking and stuff like that, and we uh we got a GoPro. So once we got the GoPro, I was like, "Hey, I mean, you got he has a GoPro. I was like, you got the GoPro, I got the channel. Why not put them together?" And so there's gonna be some summer stuff. Um, and I won't, like I said, I won't spoil what it's called or exactly what it's gonna be. But there's also obviously these deep cuts episodes, and then I'm trying to publish my poetry. But somewhere in there is like I want to start putting out just like you know maybe short stories just to get myself warmed up. Maybe start collaborating with other writers like you, or I'd really and I mean I hate to call him out here, but I'd really like to get into writing maybe with my brother again. That'd be super cool. Um, but yeah, I mean, talking to you about your process and like your book and just seeing you post about it is just like every time I see it, it's just like, damn, I really want to get back into that. I guess what is when you find yourself in like in kind of a rut like that where you're like struggling to transition from one thing to the next, you're struggling to kind of get into something that you want to get into, or whatever. What is kind of your process for overcoming that?
I'm gonna be honest and say I'm not the nicest when it comes to this. I'm not. My method doesn't work for a lot of people because a lot of people have more, I guess, kindness towards themselves. But if there is something where I really want to do it, I'm struggling to get there. I will just force myself, which is why I'm often dealing with burnout and what I like to call writer sickness, which is different from burnout and different from a writer's block. It's basically where you've pushed yourself so hard that you completely turn inwards on your writing. Because there's been multiple times where I've been working on this novel and I'm like, I need to take a break. I know I need to take a break, but I'm always so like desperate to keep going that by the time I actually finish with whatever my next goal was, I'm absolutely like bottom of the barrel, worn out, unable to even have a conversation. Um, which is currently where I'm at right now, which is why I'm not too excited to talk about the novel because right now all I can think about it is in negative terms. I can't really feel positive about it. So that's
Yeah.
why I don't recommend my process to people because it is important to be kind to yourself whenever you're making a transition from one thing to another. Definitely like give yourself little pushes. Like, all right, let's just do 100 words of this today. You know, I've done my poetry today. Let me write 200 words on my short stories. Let me create a playlist in theme with chapter one of my novel. Let me daydream a little bit about what I want to happen. Um,
Yeah.
give yourself little pushes, but if your body and your brain are both like we are just not doing this today, we're not doing this, then I think it's really good if you just respect that because if you don't, it quickly loses all the fun and excitement that it had.
Yeah, I've often said, and I've said this to multiple people, which is funny since I'm a host and I ask people this question regularly now. But I've often said the worst thing you can do for a writer's process is ask a writer about their process. And I know I know that from personal experience, especially when it comes to in relation to when is this getting done or how far
Mhm.
along are you on this? It's like shut the fuck up. Now that you
Yeah,
asked me that, I am now 10 more steps behind where I was just because you asked me where I was. Like that just
yeah,
feels like it set me back so much. So I definitely get that. But I also think that like sometimes it's good to talk about or for me at least, it's good to talk about the process out loud. Because it makes me understand my own process better. Sometimes when I'm like they say when you teach something to someone else, you learn it better yourself. So
yeah,
sometimes speaking it out loud, um, it can help, but it can also hurt because it's like it just makes you feel pressured.
yeah. Um, for me personally, whenever I'm just talking about my process, I'm always happy to talk about things that I do in order to write because I like to, maybe give other people ideas. But when it comes to like certain things, whenever I am dealing with like writer sickness or so, there are just times where I'm like, I don't want to talk about this because emotionally right now I am burned out. I am over it, but my process itself isn't something I'm distressed over. It's been the same thing I've been following since I was in middle school. It's been the way I learned writing. It's how I write. It's just talking about the books or the results of those processes that occasionally can make me feel like I am walking half a mile back from where I was.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely get that. And it's sometimes I find myself like looking at previous stuff that I've written and almost kind of getting jealous of myself. Like, oh man, that guy's really good. That guy's really fucking good. I wish I could write something like that. Um, in kind of the sense of like you, I sometimes have this thing where I wonder if like that's it, like that the thing that I just wrote is gonna be the best thing, and that's my peak. And like I'm constantly having that fear, and I know I'm only 22, but like that is a constant fear for me. Is am I gonna hit my peak and just go down from there? You know, am I gonna catapult to the top and then just and because I don't if this is my peak, like I have such higher dreams, I guess you could say, and like I just yeah I think I'm too much of a perfectionist to ever like admit my peak, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
I can relate.
and sometimes that can be someone's downfall, you know? But
Yeah. Yeah.
like if you can't admit when you're when you've hit the peak and there's nowhere else to go but down, then like your spiral down oftentimes is a lot worse. Um,
Yeah, I think
so I guess
the thing that helps me with that is that I don't believe there is a peak. Um, I don't believe there is ever a defining moment that you feel is your peak. I don't think nearly anyone else can look at you and say this is where you were at your best and nothing else afterwards will ever compare because those are things that you have control over.
right.
Um, you can always you can always get better. You can always work just as hard as you used to. You can always change it up and find your new best peak. Um, I do believe in peak in terms of like, oh yeah, my books were selling the most whenever I was no, my books were selling the most 10 years ago and now they're not selling as much. Like you can describe 10 years ago as your financial peak, but and as peak in terms of writing, I just don't think that thing exists. I think as a writer, you are supposed to change. And if that means that suddenly you feel like you are worse, then that's you, not your writing.
So I mean, yeah, I like what you say when you said you're supposed to change, you're supposed to evolve, and I think that it would be like you can get to one peak, but then like you can just go climb a whole new mountain, and I know that as a hiker, my whole life, I just get to one peak and then climb down and go to a whole new mountain, or you know what I mean. So that's a good way to look at it. Is you got to change your perspective and what how you look at life and how you the challenges you choose to overcome and the mountains you choose to climb. Um, because like one of my favorite artists said, his name's Jelly Roll, and he's super amazing.
Mhm.
Like all of his music and everything. He says I went to see him in concert. But he was saying that. Oh my god, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
Um, I can't help you there. Yeah,
Oh
I grew up
god.
in Joliet though, so.
Oh my god. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so he was saying that people always complain about him changing as an artist, and oh you don't rap the same, you don't sing the same as you used to. Or it's like when I started out, I was broke on the streets selling crack. What did you want me to do? Stay broke on the streets selling crack? Like that's not what my
Mhm.
life is anymore. So that's not like who I am as a person anymore. I don't rap the same. I don't write the same. I don't sing the same because that's not who I am anymore. My life has changed. He has a wife and kids now. Like, his life's pretty good. He still writes about depression and anxiety and his struggles, but like he does it in a different way. And it's just, he evolved as a person, um, you
Mhm.
know, but it's
Yeah.
like, that's what you have to do as an artist. Um, and without that, there's no growth. Um, I think I wish I could remember it, but like it's this I wrote this quote on Facebook, and it was like to stay complacent, or to stay stagnant is to stay complacent, and to stay complacent is to settle, or something like that. And I just like, it was just like basically the message was like, don't settle. No matter how slow your car is, keep moving forward, kind of thing like that. um,
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are having a little bit of technical difficulties, so we're gonna wrap this one up early. But Miss Beelzebub will definitely be back, and you will definitely see her on our live show on Saturday. one of these Saturdays, whether this comes out after or before or whenever it airs, you'll see her. And she's back, ladies and gentlemen. So welcome her back. Please go follow her on Instagram um, at Beelzebub underscore Montgomery and on Facebook at Beelzy Poetry. And before we go, I just want to ask you if there's anything you could say to either the human races in general or writers and artists in general or both. And you had the floor for 5 minutes. What would you say?
I think I would start by saying that misery isn't as all encompassing as you think it is, and that suffering does not make you a better person. If you look outside right now, if you look at people online, if you look at the general attitude of almost everyone I have met, it is just a lot of anger and pain, and I would say that more people than not are actually relishing in it. It doesn't feel good, but people have stopped thinking that there's alternatives to it. I think I would tell everyone that it's okay to be patient. You know, it is okay to wait. It is okay to be upset. Um, and that the best thing you can do for that is to do it yourself, is to take a moment and actually be by yourself. Don't pay attention to how the world might think of your suffering or what art you can make out of it, and what's the benefit of that, or how you can make someone else care or understand about your pain. Try to make yourself understand it. Try to make yourself do something about it. A lot of artists right now are in the place where there's just so much pain that they think, okay, I could make a ton of art of this, and then they're finding that they don't have nearly as much of accomplishment whenever they do. And it's because sometimes pain needs to be worked on before it can be made into art.
Pain
And
is
it's
meant to be
okay
felt.
to, yeah, it is okay to take a break. And don't pay attention to the world and what it wants from you. Because as an artist, there's always going to be someone that doesn't want anything from you at all. So don't pay attention to what others want. Just listen to yourself for once.
Absolutely. That is amazing advice. And I agree. It is okay to not be okay. And self care is important. You see all these artists, like you said, making, you know, really good songs about anxiety and depression, and that's what they're actually going through, and they're making great art from it. But then you see, Juice World or Mac Miller or Kurt Cobain or all these artists in the 27 Club just overdose, and they were all making songs about pain and suffering, and they were real songs, they were genuine songs, but they didn't focus on self care enough. And funnily enough, Mac Miller's last music video that he put out was a song called Self Care. And the video is him inside of a coffin smoking a cigarette. And he digs himself out of the coffin, which is the symbolism there, right before he died, is like just insane. And with the
Mhm.
song being called Self Care, and then him overdosing, you know what I mean? It just it reminded me a lot of what you were saying. Is sometimes these artists focus too much on the misery and not enough on taking care of themselves, and just being just sitting with the pain and feeling it, and not, because we all want to numb it out. Whether it's drugs or food or sex or candy or whatever it is, or video games. People just numb it out. And I mean, just most of the days today, it's just scrolling through TikTok or scrolling through whatever, and that's just a form of numbing it out. But I agree with you. Sometimes you should sit with the pain and be not okay. So thank you for
Mhm.
that, and I will end us by with a quote from my man Jelly Roll. He says this all the time. He said this at the concert I was at. He said this at awards shows that he's been at. He says the rear view mirror is smaller than the windshield for a reason, because what's in front of us is so much more important than what's behind us. So keep moving forward, keep looking into the future. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to go subscribe to us, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, Audible, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Samsung, and anywhere else you find your podcast. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Good night.